for National Geographic for over 2 decades. That's amazing. He specialized in wildlife and particularly big cats. And we're going to see a lot of that. He's a Matthew Explorer and has been named BBC Wildlife Photographer of the Year, the BBC Wildlife Photojournalist of the Year, and so on and so on and so on. I can be standing here reading a lot, but I'm not going to do that because I know it's enough when you see and hear the story of this icon, in my opinion. You will understand me. So it's my biggest pleasure to honor Mr. Steve Winter to be on the stage and just amaze even you. So most welcome, sir. The stage is yours. Rock on.
Thank you. Hey, and it's great to be here also. My grandfather was from Malmo and came over to the States in the 20s. I never met the man, but I'm glad to have a Swedish connection, and it's great to be here. Now, I worked at National Geographic for 28 years. It was my life stream since I was 8 years old, so I feel I'm one of the luckiest guys on the face of the earth. Now, a lot of people ask me, how'd you get involved in big cats? And I got involved with big cats on my first natural history story. I was a photojournalist at Black Star Photo Agency in Manhattan, switched to wildlife. My first natural history story on the resplendent Quetzal, and then I would sit in a blind with my lens trained on the nest, and then at night I would walk back up the mountain in the cloud forest where I was staying in Guatemala, and the hair in the back of my head would stand up, and my arms, and I felt like something was watching, following me. I turned around, I didn't see anything. I hadn't worked in the jungles before. And one night I'm lying in my bed, reading my book with my headlamp like I do every night. And all of a sudden I heard the stairs creaking. And he can't turn that up because he walked away. Then I heard the floorboards creaking. Then I heard scratching under the door. Then all the hair on my whole body stood up, and I grabbed my machete, whacked it on the side of the bed, silence. And then I whistled, and I heard front paws, back paws going out the stairs. I grabbed the walkie-talkie, called the naturalist I was with. He started, I told him what had happened. He started laughing, and he said, "Steve, don't worry, it's just a black panther." Now, I was a little bit pissed off because it's like, I've been here 5 weeks, Juan Carlos. Why didn't you tell me that I was living with a black panther? And he said, "We didn't want to worry you." And I figured that's the night the big cats chose me, because I didn't know anything about big cats. I barely passed biology in high school. And if anybody would have told me my next story would have been jaguars, I would have told them they were crazy, that I didn't know anything about big cats. But I found out that Nat Geo had never done a story on the jaguar before. So like we do with every story, we do our research. And I found out that they'd never done it. My wife said, "Don't you think in 107 years, if National Geographic's never done a story on the world's 3rd largest cat, there's probably a pretty good reason why." She's the smart one of the group. And the reason was it was too difficult. But I started out in Corcovado National Park on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica because we had a grantee that we were funding who was capturing jaguars and putting radio collars on to find out where they went if they left the protected area. But when I came, so did the first El Nino. He was catching jags on the beach because they were eating marine turtles. The water got too hot. The turtles disappeared, and so did the jaguars. And I thought my newfound career as a wildlife photographer was soon going to be over. But I emailed a bunch of people and said, I need to find a place where you can see jaguars. Got a response from a Brazilian, said, come down to the Pantanal. Went to the Pantanal via Cancun, where I found this place called Pepe Swim with Jaguars. They was saving former jaguar pets, and I got the picture I didn't know I wanted, a jaguar in front of, with jet skis in front of Club Med Cancun. And I went down to the Pantanal. The Pantanal is the world's largest wetland now. It's in far western Brazil. It's 95% privately owned, mostly cattle ranches. And when I got there, every jaguar thought the only good, every cowboy thought the only good jaguar was a dead jaguar. That every dead cow could be attributed to a jaguar. I felt that this was ridiculous. The scientist I was working with, her boss happened to be my best friend. So I kind of blackmailed Dr. Alan Rabinowitz into doing the first ever radio GPS collared study of big cats. So we could get answers about this. We didn't want jaguars to end up like this. A rug in the ranch house, or like this, 12 jaguars killed in 12 months by one man, all supposed cattle killer. When we got done with the project, we found out only 1% of cattle deaths could be attributed to jaguars, because whoever thought about putting a bunch of ranches in the world's largest wetland, I thought it was a pretty ridiculous idea. But while I was there, I still had to get pictures of jaguars. I saw 5 on the river, but just fleeting glimpses. So somebody asked me if I wanted to go to the ranch where Teddy Roosevelt hunted jaguar back in 1913. I said, sure, but why? They said every night at dusk, the biggest cat they've ever seen starts walking on the road hunting. So I took this man, the ranger of Pantanal National Park, Fion. He's also the guy that taught me how to stick my head in a bucket and call a jaguar. And it sounds just like this. Now, the first time I did that was at dawn. I took the ranch truck out, got on the back of the flatbed, made that noise. 10 seconds later, a jaguar called back. So I got back in the truck and drove back to the ranch house. Because I thought, what am I going to do if the jaguar actually comes? But I did get the picture of the opener of the first ever jaguar story in Nat Geo history. 9 years later, I went back and found out, because of the 3 pictures that I had in the first Nat Geo story from the Pantanal, most of the ranches in the area had turned into ecotourism lodges, because they could make more money off of tourism than they could off of cattle ranching, which was fantastic. Now I went back with Bertie Gregory, who was my assistant at the time, to do the next jaguar story a couple of years ago in a jaguar film for Nat Geo Wild. You can see I put a camera trap here. We'll talk about camera traps later. But with the flash going off, I got the opener of that story too. This young cub who was taught by his mother and his brother to climb a tree to get away from predators when she's out hunting. And there you got that beautiful image of that cub in the tree. And 2 years ago, one of my friends, who's a Brazilian, he did a study on the area and all the jaguars that are being protected there, and found out that each cat's worth each cow is worth $2,000 in its lifetime. But every jaguar brings in $108,000 each year in ecotourism income. So now, because of ecotourism, they won't harm the hair on any one of these jaguars' heads. So this is the oasis for protection for the jaguar. Now, we did a film too, but most of what you get every day are spectacular failures, like Scarface here going after a caiman. Now, the caiman is their #1 food source in the north of the Pantanal. And then here's a short clip that Bertie and I got. Oh, there's Pirata. That's another cat failing at getting a caiman. But check this out.
Along the tangled edge of the Brazilian river, a hunter stalks the shadows. He is a jaguar, a male in his prime. Those who know him call him Scarface, from the road he earned clawing his way to supremacy.
So this is what they do. They're on the riverbank. It's nice and cool there, and they see the caiman, and then
He is the top predator in a land of predators, the best.
I think how much power and strength that takes to take that caiman up the bank. Way to go, Scarface. In 2 months of being on the river, we only saw 2 kills. I was back for a week with my wife. In September, we saw 5 kills in 6 days. It's always the luck of the draw. But that's what jaguars are the only cat that killed by piercing the skull. Every time one of the cats got a caiman around the throat, they lost. And this was my holy grail. I always tried to get a picture of a mom and cub jaguar, and finally got it while we were filming that TV show. Now, jaguar shamans have always been very important to jaguars and people's respect for them. Jaguar hunting stopped in 1972 when CITES came into being. One of the places I went was Chiribiquete National Park in Colombia. It was thought that in the Western Hemisphere, humans came 10,000 years ago. Guess what these were dated at by a Danish university? 20,000 years old. And this is what the shamans see when they're on their ayahuasca trips. And they see it no matter where they're at in an area that looks like Chiribiquete. Now, in 1969, 25,000 jaguar skins came into New York City Harbor for the fashion industry. It was outlawed in 72, but now this tribe here in Peru, in the Peruvian Amazon, are hunting jaguar 365 days a year. You see jaguar skins hanging up. Nothing's done about this. These cats are all killed for their 4 canines, which are boiled down in somewhere in China and made a paste for a brand new type of traditional medicine. So jaguars are in trouble again. Now, my editor sent me an email, a bunch of us an email, and said, what would your dream assignment be? And I thought, I just did a story on a cat I hardly ever saw. Why don't I do a story on a cat that I'll never see? And I wrote, I'll do the snow leopard. Now, the first thing we need to find out are where are scientists working on the cats. So I went to the Afghan Pakistani border, because there was a snow leopard trust and Panthera project going on there. But after 2 weeks, they had to smuggle me out and dress me up like a local, so I thought I'll work in India. And this is a little video about what it was like.
I myself brought 33 bags with me of equipment, sleeping bags, more clothes than you think what you need. So, you know, we flew from Delhi and then Delhi up to Leh, the capital of Ladakh.
This is where we're going to start our snow leopard expedition. We'll be here a few days to acclimate to the altitudes at 12,000 feet.
And then got the bags into where the road ends by truck and jeep. And then we had to load everything on horseback and walk around. We took in 14 remote cameras, did a whole camp. Tents, sleeping bags, cots, pads. We bought food from the U.S. and we bought some. At night it was 30 below zero. And I've spent my whole career working in jungles. So this was a real switch for me. We looked for locations with the help of the local people that worked with the snow NGOs. They had already ID'd locations where the cat comes to farm. With this knowledge, we were able to find locations to set up cameras where we knew that cats would come. Once we knew we were having success in like a specific trail, then I could mine that trail.
Okay. Caps on
Now, I had to use remote cameras for these secretive things, but I wanted them to be my pictures, so I used an infrared beam. So the cat breaks the beam in my composition. The picture's taken immediately, flashes go off. I had to set it up so whether it came by at high noon with bright white mountains in the background, or at midnight, I was going to get a good picture. Though we only had one shot and the whole thing shot at night. Most of the cameras that I put up got one frame in 6 months. So they're very secretive animals. But here, this is the first picture that we got. Now, I got this image and I was able to see the image and then reframe it. Because one of the guys that worked on a BBC film, he was working with me. The BBC film was really about how impossible it was to film snow leopards. And he said, you'll never get a picture of a cat here during the day. But I was able to see this and then reframe it for this. A cat marking its territory right at dusk, when we all like to shoot dawn and dusk, a little bit of snow coming down. And it was my birthday, so this was a great birthday present, which became a double page in National Geographic. This one, if you have a Mac computer, you can go into nature and use it as your screensaver. And this is the picture that took a big weight off my shoulders because I knew we were being successful. Here's a cat also marking its territory. Now, males mark their territory to tell other males, this is my territory, not yours. Or to females, since it's mating season, they're really asking, do you come to this rock often? Because it's mating season, males are looking for females. Now, Buddhism is the glue that holds these communities together. As I was walking around, my wife and I were doing the summer recce of a couple areas, and I'd see a piece of paper stuck on a rock way back there in the middle of nowhere with a picture of the Dalai Lama and some Sanskrit. And I asked Tashi, my local assistant, I said, what did it say? And it said, the Dalai Lama says, follow the Buddha's tenets and respect all life. So I wanted to find out about these revenge killings like the jaguars and the cowboys, and hear the herders and the snow leopards and the Tibetan wolf. So I went up, we took a 5-day walk up to meet a bunch of herders. This guy had just sold off all his small animals because snow leopards cannot take down a yak. Yaks are too big. But these people rely on their livestock. Local people need to benefit from living with predators. They need their livestock. They use the skins for warmth, the fur to make their clothes. Yak butter, yak milk, yak cheese, yak meat are protein for their family. So we were trying to find ways to help the local people out. Like this predator-proof corral where all they needed is about US $75 to buy some chain link fence and get it up there because they had no shortage of rocks. So I asked the guy there what he thought of his new predator-proof corral, and he said, it's the best night's sleep that I've had since I was a young boy. Because I don't have to worry about snow leopards or wolves coming in to eat my livestock. And then I found out that in these villages, they were losing about 30% of their herd every year to disease. So I had just been to USAID in Delhi. I got a bunch of hoof and mouth vaccine. I hired the vet on the right, and we started a 3-year program to vaccinate their herd as long as they promise not to kill snow leopards. So it's a win-win situation, taking an economic negative, turning it into an economic positive, saving snow leopards and helping people at the same time. Now, many people ask me, you're a photographer, why are you doing this? Because I don't want to spend 2 years of my life getting images of one of the most magnificent animals on the planet, but to know in the back of my mind they're just going to be killed by the local people. Every problem has a solution. It's our responsibility as journalists to find that solution and help out wherever we can. That was the opener of the snow leopard story. And then I left because I'd been there about 3.5 months. And when I came back after 6 weeks to take all the traps down, Tasha said, we need to check that last trap you put up, because during a snowstorm I saw the flashes going off at night. And I got the first ever picture of a snow leopard in a snowstorm. And with this image I won BBC Wildlife Photographer of the Year. I did not enter the contest. My wife Sharon entered it for me. She's a writer for National Geographic. The way I looked at it, I already won. I wanted to be a Nat Geo photographer since I was 8 years old. So I won already. But it turns out the story only starts on the pages of National Geographic. When you win these contests and the show's up for 10 months in the Museum of Natural History in London and travels throughout the world, millions of people then see the story and learn about the plight of the animal you just spent 2 years working with. So the contests are very important. Now, I have, and I hate this, it's the only second time I've had to use the word. My late friend, Howard Quigley, asked me a couple of years ago, Steve, how come in over 20 years you've never worked in the United States? And I said, well, Howard, no reason, but why? And he said, the greater Yellowstone ecosystem is rapidly being rewilded with the reintroduction of wolves and grizzly bears. He said the natural history of the mountain lion, cougar, or puma, all the same cat, has been completely changing. He said, I got my PhD on cougars, but they don't act the way I did when I studied them, because now the ecosystem is coming back, healing itself because there's wolves and grizz, and becoming whole. Just like if our body was missing something or we were sick, when we're well again or have an operation and we're back together, our bodies are whole. The same thing with an ecosystem. You take 2 of the main predators out, it goes out of whack, you put them back in, now it's functioning again. Now, the big thing was the wolves were coming after cougar cubs. I thought this story was going to be easy, till they told me that this is the first ever cougar story that National Geographic has ever done. And but they were using GPS sat collars, so I thought it would be easier because I could follow those and get pictures like this of a mountain cub going into the cave outside of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. A lot of people say, how do you put GPS sat collars on a wild cat? Well, in this area they use dogs to run them. They go up a tree. And then here's a graduate student in the Black Hills of South Dakota darting this male in the tree. You can see he's not very happy about getting darted in the rear end, shot in the rear end with a tranquilizer dart. And then lower him to the ground. And, excuse me, photographically here, I used a long exposure, like half a second or a second. Cat's moving down, flash is going off, my assistant's holding it, you get that blur effect there. And then this was very important, they were doing DNA studies, because my assistant had climbed up to the mountain closest to Kelly and Jackson Hole, and he looked down in the spotting scope and saw 7 cougars together. Like he was looking at pride of lions in Africa, he was looking at a pride of mountain lions in Wyoming. He called the scientists down to Kelly, and they said, mountain lions don't do that, you must be seeing something else. Now you don't tell a 6'5" Wyoming cowboy that they're a liar. So he gave him the GPS points and said, come out and see for yourself. It took him a couple hours to get there and climb to the top of the mountain. By the time they got there, there was 8 mountain lions because the male had come. They had always done this by the females priding up with other females with cubs to protect the cubs from wolves coming into their kill. The wolf pack will come and steal the elk kill and kill any of the cubs. So, very interesting fact there. Then they put the collar on, and away the cat goes. It wears the collar for 1 year. On the outside, there's an explosive bolt. At exactly 12 months, that bolt will explode and the collar falls off. Now, part of this story I wanted to do, how am I doing on time? All right. Part of the story I wanted to do was urban wildlife, because Howard had told me about cats on the outskirts of Boulder, Colorado, Ashland, Oregon, and a project in Los Angeles. So I went to meet the scientists from the National Park Service at a mountain lion meeting in Bozeman, Montana. And I started asking him, do you have any mountain lions that walked on trails where you could see the lights of LA in the background? And every question I asked him, his answer was no. So I gave him my card and said, if anything changes, please let me know. 8 months later, I'm in the dentist chair right next to the Empire State Building when I get a text, all in caps, from this man, Jeff Sicketts, that said, call me now. Turns out they had got a picture of a mountain lion right down here by this cross, a trail cam they had set up for bobcat. So now my job starts. How do you put remote cameras in a park that gets 24 million visitors a year without those cameras getting stolen? So I put them up, and I got a picture of a bobcat with the lights of LA in the background. Now, if only the mountain lion would go there. Guess what? He never has. But then I got a picture of a deer. Then I got a picture of a raccoon. Then I got a shot of a guy walking his dog. Then I got a picture of a guy going, what's that thing? Then I got a picture of people doing a selfie they'll never see because it's my camera. And then, after 11 months of trying, I finally got a picture of P22, that's Puma number 22, who's now a celebrity in LA, walking there with all the lights of LA, Hollywood, and Santa Monica behind him. Now, all hell broke loose because the LA Times wanted to publicize the 125th anniversary of National Geographic show at the Annenberg Space for Photography. And they said, do you have an image that we could use? And National Geographic Director of Photography, Sarah Lean, goes, well, we sure do. And they put this picture on the cover of the LA Times on a Saturday, and all hell broke loose. Jeff had to go on every local news channel and say, all right, for all you 24 million people that walk there, after work you walk your dogs. You may have heard P22 killed a Chihuahua last week at the Griffith Park reservoir, and he was on camera because of course they have CCTV there. He had to tell him that if you see the cat, just wave your hands. And then until last week when he ate that Chihuahua, only 7 people had seen him in 10 years. In a 9 square mile park. But still, I need to get that picture that I wanted to get. Because I had asked Jeff if to really tell the story of urban wildlife, wouldn't it be great to get a picture of a mountain lion with the Hollywood sign? Now, Nat Geo TV and Planet Earth asked for some video of it. So lights, camera, action. There's P-22 walking in front of the lights of Hollywood there. And then after 15 months, I got that picture that I originally asked about. Now this looks just like the Rothfather's P-22. This is a 4-second exposure. I had to find a spot where it was dark, where the cat goes. The 2 flashes go off, the cat kept walking, and you use the 4 seconds to bring up the Hollywood sign. Because the Hollywood sign hasn't been lit since 1928, when it said Hollywood Land and they were selling homes, which now are the Hollywood Hills. Very expensive homes, I might add now. And because of this picture, they're now building the world's largest wildlife overpass called the Wallace-Annenberg Wildlife Overpass, 10 miles north of LA, over the freeway, because these cats are being inbred. They can't get across 10 lanes of freeway. So that's great. That just shows the power of photography.